Very good to be here. I'm joining from Johannesburg. It's 10 a.m. here, so good morning, everyone. I'm also keen to hear where from the world you're joining us. So feel free to just message in the chat, where around the world are you joining the World Finance Forum from this morning? I thought I'll start off by sharing a little bit about my personal background and my personal life motto, and that is make it count. It is my life motto. Well, it has the word count in it, and I am obsessed about numbers, but really it's broader than that. It's around the theme of embracing every moment, realizing that there's opportunities and challenges, and being able to seize it and really make an impact in the moment and make it count. Starting from my childhood days, I grew up in a very beautiful place of South Africa, the east coast of South Africa, KwaZulu-Natal. And that is actually known for its sugarcane fields. So some of my fondest memories was being able to go to the sugar mills and watch at an early age the very important but complex topic of processes and how inputs in the form of sugarcane went into this processing mill to come out as outputs in the form of sugar. So I have very fond memories of those very complex intellectual but very diverse experiences. Fast forward many decades later, and I'm very privileged to have had the opportunity to travel to many parts of our world, of the globe. And this was majority as a result of work requirements, work interactions, and of course I used the opportunity to make it count for some personal or leisure travel as well. And in those global platforms or forums, I guess for me, the biggest takeaways was the opportunity to connect, to network, to share best practices from a finance perspective, and then also in turn, offer some new ways, some different ways of working that I could take from South Africa to the rest of the world. I have a very small but beautiful and super supportive family. My husband keeps me honest on the new technologies. I am running after my 1.5-year-old when I'm not working or cooking these days. And I'm supported by my parents, who are actually the child minder or caregiver to my 1.5-year-old daughter. I'm a firm believer in taking time out, in stopping, in lifting your head, just to breathe, just to take in the fresh air. And at every opportunity that I get, I try to go to the ocean or go to the bushveld here in South Africa, go to the mountains, and really just take the time to pause and think through the journey. Where am I? Where are we from a firm perspective? What are the next steps going forward? At the heart of it all, I will say that I'm very passionate about community outreach programs. I personally have felt the benefit of being part of communities and being lifted by communities. And so it's very important for me to give back. I spend time giving back in whatever way or form that I can. And I encourage my teams and whoever that I interact with to do the same. It's so important to take everybody along on a journey. And so this is near and dear to my heart. So now that you know a bit about me, let's get straight into the content of today's discussion. As a new CFO, what does this mean? Well, it's the new CFO for me in the context of joining an incredible firm in December last year, so just over 5 months in. Weber Wenzel is a leading full-service law firm on our African continent. We have more than 150 years of experience. We are very close to our clients and support them with tailored commercial business solutions. And I'm very proud to say, and one of the indicators that drew me to the firm is we have one of South Africa's most longest standing dedicated pro bono teams. Prior to joining Weber Wenzel, I spent time at Deloitte Consulting. I was the Africa CFO there, T-Systems South Africa as the VP of Finance, and then Avanade South Africa as a finance director. So when you look at this experience, and when I looked back at my experience before joining Weber Wenzel, I knew that it was not a net new experience in terms of being a new CFO, but it was being the new CFO at Weber Wenzel. And I wanted to make sure that I used the time in a very optimal way to transition. So I needed to define what is that transition period. In defining what is that transition period, I asked the question again, and that is, how long does it take to transition into a leadership role in a new organization? So I went to content or intellectual property out there, and I asked Gartner, and Gartner Finance says, well, we need about 100 days to transition into a CFO role. I then read a book by Michael D. Watkins, which says, actually, you have about 90 days. I looked at my calendar for the period of December, Jan, and Feb said, well, for this 3-month period, you do have 90 days. And then I jolted in a bolt of reality. And that is that in December in South Africa, we have the very warm, lovely summer holidays and quite a few public holidays, the festive season. And so realistically, I had an effective 55 days for my transition period. It was clear to me that I needed to make that period count. And it was clear to me that I needed to quickly define how and what I would do to make that period count. In coming back to answering the questions of how and what, I defaulted to my style of connecting and lifting. And the reason I defaulted to it is because I've seen very personally and through other leaders at a global level, the magic that one can create when you connect and lift together. So let's start with the definition of connecting. At its simplest form, connecting means joining or linking things together, especially to provide access, communication, and progress. Turning to lifting, lifting is the action of directing or carrying from a lower base to a higher base. And so I was clear that I was going to keep with these styles, but I absolutely needed to expand out to what does that mean? Who did I need to connect with? How would we lift together? So, connecting. I simplified and really crisped out 4 areas that I wanted to connect to very quickly. Those 4 areas are the firm's strategy, my finance team, all other stakeholders, and of course, our firm's digital strategy. And I'll spend some time unpacking each of those. If we start with the firm's strategy, I think it's super important to note that you can't, as a CFO or any finance executive or leader, direct a finance strategy without first understanding what your organization or firm strategy is. And so it was for me critical from the outset to understand what the firm's strategy is, even start to give insights and my point of views around how we could move forward together. And then very importantly, start to bring that to and align and inform the finance strategy for the firm, and of course, to take that back to our finance team. It is absolutely fundamental that the firm strategy needs to inform the finance team or any functional area strategy for that matter. In parallel, I spent a lot of time with my finance team. Now, this part was quite interesting because it was definitely not the conventional spending time or meet and greet sessions. And this applies to the meet and greet sessions with both the finance team and other stakeholders. Usually, I would do in-person coffee chats or a quick catch-up over lunch, a real get-to-know-you session when joining a new organization or stepping into a new role. And this time, it was in the midst of this global pandemic that we've all gone through. It was a very different setting. It is a virtual setting. And so I needed to make this virtual setting count. The option that I took was to still keep with the connection of coffee chats or lunch breaks or informal meet and greets, but this way using technology, using our virtual medium to enable those sessions. And I will say that if you think that there's not an opportunity to still connect virtually, I found that this was absolutely an opportunity in my first 3 months at Weber Wenzel. And in fact, I was able to be a lot more productive. Now, mindful of everyone's space and time commitments, the thing that worked really well for me was scheduling shorter sessions 30 minutes or 45 minutes, sometimes even 15 minutes. Our lawyers are very busy. And so we wanted to maximize the time, but call it a virtual coffee chat. Everybody needs to drink their coffee or hydrate in some way or form. And so while you were nourishing, you could also have those touch base sessions. A fun way that we connected as a team together, and we continue to do so, is through a topic that I was informed about recently called Pecha Kucha. And I don't know if anybody's heard about this, but in its very simple format, it's a storytelling format where each person in the team needs to share a little bit about themselves so that they're offering insights into their personality, what makes them tick, what gets them motivated, what are their challenges if they want to share that. And in turn, everybody gets a chance to have a platform, to have a voice. I did find that in team settings, not everybody was comfortable to switch on their video or to share a bit or even to say anything. And so this gave the opportunity, and it's continuing to be momentum in our team, where we're having these sessions every other week or so. It's a 30-minute lunch break session where we share a bit of ourselves. And my colleagues are telling me that actually over the years, and some of my team members have worked together for many, many years, they've not had those insights about their colleagues and team members. And so it's proven to be most insightful, very exciting. And what I can absolutely say is that I've got a team of musicians and really, really good bakers. So if you think about banana bread, I think we've got banana bread on steroids if I listen to the variety of baking options that my team have referenced. So that's been a great and fun interaction. We've gotten to know each other, and we've also gotten to connect even in a virtual way. In engaging with my finance team, it was very important for me to understand what was the status quo, what is the current state of the team from a finance maturity perspective. And I did also specifically reference what individual team members' career aspirations are. It's so important to understand how does this wealth of skills team members experience fit into the now state and can be part of the plan going forward. Again, linking back to the finance strategy, which elevates to the firm strategy. In terms of other stakeholders, this is quite a vast spread in my Weber Wenzel context. It is absolutely first and foremost my partners that I support, the board, the ExCom, our clients, our vendors, and absolutely our people at the heart of all that we do. And so these were really important sessions. I used it to align on expectations and just establishing that dialogue on how we would work together and how we would connect. I was also deliberate, both in the finance team sessions and my stakeholder sessions, to offer the experience and the skills that I brought to the firm. And at the outset, note that I wanted to foster a finance-heavy partnering approach with the firm. And not knowing kind of where this was, at that point in time of joining, it was important just to draw the picture of what the benefits could be for all aspects of the firm's strategy if together finance plus the firm and all our stakeholders work together in a business partnering way. These were really great discussions, and I think the only one aspect I will share was that I was very deliberate to think through the style of those interactions and the importance of maximizing the FaceTime, even if it was virtually together. I was also cognizant of a very heavy year. This pandemic that we've all gone through together has been heavy on so many people in so many different ways and form. So I was mindful of that journey that we're all in together, the challenges that we're facing, and that the fact of the matter is that we need to support each other in those discussions and the way forward. I listened a lot in those discussions and also approached it from a perspective of empathy to really truly understand the context setting, where we were at, and of course the baseline for the journey ahead. If I turn to the digital strategy, definitely not last but least, I think absolutely foremost in so many CFOs, CIOs, and really all C-suite's minds at the moment is this topic of digital strategy or digital journey. And here my objective was to understand the strategic outcomes and the business outcomes that the firm planned to realize through digital. And I've spent quite a bit of time with our CIO trying to get up to speed on the business and the financial benefits that we plan to extract from our firm's digital journey. And at these forums, I also brought together my experience of ERP implementations or adopting robotics process automations in previous experiences. And the idea was to share, collaborate, and just make sure that we were all working from the same baseline forward. Very important aspect of digital, and in my view, cannot be ignored by any means or state. And I think speaking to you all virtually today, we all absolutely embrace that. We know that it's part of the fabric of our business existence. So what you'll see through all of this is there was massive interactions. There was a lot of interactions, very deliberate interactions. And if I look at then what I was trying to achieve, or the objective for each of those interactions, it was to get up to speed on the business very quickly. It was to align on these mission critical priorities. Business as usual has to carry on, but they are absolutely very important projects that need to be deployed in a short term. So it was important to hear what are those timelines, where in the maturity stage are we? Have we got the right resources mobilized? Do I need to capacitate the team further? And even though joining a new organization, I read somewhere that changing companies or organizations is one of the 5 stressful aspects of one's life. It can be very difficult. It can be very busy. What I needed to do was maintain that level of structure throughout all the engagements and keep a very firm eye on those mission critical priorities. This laser focused approach is so important, especially in this day and age where it's easy to get distracted, where it's easy to think of all the other priorities that one has to attend to and the team is being pulled into. But as a leader, if we've defined those mission critical priorities and we have that laser focused approach, the outcomes normally work themselves out. I also paid very specific attention, and I had at the heart of my engagements the aspect of communication. And this was important for me because it is simply learning about the terminology of Weber Wenzel, about learning about the terminology that all my stakeholders subscribe to and that I quickly need to get up to speed with. And noting that moving into the legal dimension was a net new experience for me from the technology and consulting side, albeit the professional services thread environment. There are instances where I needed to ask clarification questions. And so that was really important to go in with this mindset of learning and understanding, and also just to raise your hand. If you don't understand something, and this applies to all levels of finance in all interactions, ask the question, fully digest what it is that you're taking away from those engagements. Now, all these vast levels or interactions of connection was very interesting for me, very insightful. But I will say this, that it didn't stop with me connecting into those 4 aspects. In all those sessions, what I took away was that there was opportunity for me to connect any of these aspects with each other. And so, as an example, the finance team connecting into the firm strategy into ultimately the finance strategy is important. So I use the opportunity to firstly understand the firm strategy and then explain to the finance team and co-create with the finance team how it is that we were together going to develop our finance strategy going forward, what time frame did it relate to, and how would each person play a role in that journey. The importance of co-creating and lifting together is for me the common thread that makes us achieve and be successful quickly, of course, not without stumbling blocks, but with a unified vision and a unified journey. So if you come back to the definition of connect, which is to join or link things together, especially to provide access, communication, and progress, you can quickly see from this picture that the manifestation is lift. Turning to the concept of lift then. And it's by no means that the connection comes first and the lifting second, or the lifting first and the connection second. For me, connecting and lifting is very much verbs that we do in parallel. And the three areas that I focused on specifically in those initial days, and I continue to do so, is around the finance team, our finance processes, and digital and technology. Lifting together as a finance team, this meant very clinically enabling our finance team. We wanted to have an immediate and exciting opportunity to focus our team on skills and capabilities, because we all subscribed to the fact that we're building a futuristic and a best-in-class finance team. The initial actionable outcome that we got, and I'm very pleased to say, is we were able to give access to more than half of our team to global finance training forums. And this helps them not only to connect with the global peers and counterparts, but to learn more, to really lift their game and really come back to our teams and provide that best practice thinking and approach moving forward. We had simple actions and we were deliberate about celebrating successes and milestones. So from a finance team perspective, having a culture of strong work ethic, continuous learning, and stopping to celebrate those heavy lifting projects was important to us. And so, as an example, in my first 55 days at Weber Wenzel, we closed as a team numerous ExCom presentations or executive committee presentations, board presentations, a financial year in a budget planning session for next year, started engaging in the digital and technology thread, which I'll speak to shortly. And we realized that as a team, wow, we've really done a lot. And it was important that we stopped, we recognized the successes, and we celebrated together. Now, granted, these were again virtual celebration, but I think that act of just stopping and resonating the success and celebrating it is so important in building a foundation and a culture that can bode well for the future. The other thing I will say around our team is probably more around team mobility and structure. Myself and my heads of departments were very great and very good in bringing about a lot of structure within our finance team so that we revalidated that we were configured in the right way to support the business and give back to our growth platform and priorities. When I look at finance processes, I think all of you will agree with me on the call that there is continuously an opportunity to evolve and improve on our finance processes. The world, our landscape is forever changing. And so using technology, displacing some of our traditional ways of working so that we do things better, we do things smarter, we embrace technology is absolutely critical. It's at the forefront of all our priorities as we continue our journey. The other areas that we focused on very importantly was bringing strong commercial acumen into our finance processes and having a view of predicting the performance of the firm, steering growth and having some fun while doing so. The team, which is very resilient, has a lot of dedication towards our finance processes and particularly optimizing and lifting our operational excellence. Innovation and improvement is really important for us to enhance our control environment. And of course, reporting and analytics is a subset of these finance processes that we're busy looking at. This one's very important. I think on reporting and analytics, here I want to reference something that my FP&A lead tells me all the time. He says to me, what are those game changers that we can do now that's going to change and lift the trajectory of our financial performance? And it's exciting dialogue where we engage with IT, where finance and operations and other business unit leaders, including full-on support or enablement services, come to the table and collaborate around what are those things that we can do, yes, finance processes or operations-wise, that can truly start to analyze and report how we're doing and steer the path forward for where we're going. We've done a few things on this front recently, and while I'm not going to share all the examples in this forum, I will say that it's exciting opportunities to collaborate around those KPIs, those profitability reports or metrics that you can fully immerse into the business that in turn, in a very quick time frame, returns good and sustainable lift in performance results. Digital and technology. I think you can't talk about analytics or digital or reporting without speaking about technology. And so it is very important for me to work closely with our IT team, as we have been doing and will continue to do so, in making sure that the right technology investment is made for the firm, thereby optimizing our outputs from technology. It's energizing to really think through and co-create the art of the possible and create that lift for the firm. Naturally, you have to also strive for a balanced growth outlook. So it shouldn't be pie in the sky thinking by any means, but it is also just invigorating to employ your finance team, to employ the finance processes and improvements and innovation, along with the support of digital, to create that lift that is sustainable. Now, if you're thinking, wow, that is a lot going on in the first 55 days, then I would tend to agree with you. The momentum is indeed rapid. There is quite a bit happening very quickly. And what I will say is that this art of the possible is made, or all of this is made possible through our teams. It's about essentially bringing together vast amounts of people that's all moving in the same direction and giving them a space to understand their role and their moving role in the bigger picture. I come back to this, which I quote in a lot of my discussions and I try to live towards, and that is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You know, we each have a role to play. Quality and consistency is, of course, a kind of expectation or a given at this stage. And team and role playing is very, very important. Teamwork is at the center, really, of creating those connections and lifting together. So 55 days into my new role, it passed very, very quickly. It's now 5 months plus into this very exciting chapter. And yes, there are some challenges, but I'm very pleased to say mostly growth and success. And I do hope that this style and some of the tips that I've shared with you also brings opportunities for you and your organizations too. Now, no doubt, the macroeconomic, the microeconomic environments in which we operate in, they're continuously changing. It's such a dynamic world. And so it's important to just continuously reassess effectiveness of your approach and how is it that you're progressing in an aligned way with your teams and stakeholders. I'm a firm believer of connecting and connecting and lifting. And I think that this style of connecting and lifting will continue to be relevant for many, many years to come. What I found over the last decade or so in leadership finance roles is that this style has worked. It's worked on a broad level, and the numbers usually work themselves out. On that note, I want to say just a big thank you for your time this morning. I wish you all the very best and stay healthy and well as we progress. Giles, back to you.
Great, thank you so much for that. It sounds like you had a really busy 55 days.
It was very busy and exciting.
Exciting. Thank you for the talk. Let me dive straight into the questions. I see some people have said they're from the UK. We've had some from France. So if anybody didn't catch at the beginning, and I'm sure I did say, do let us know whereabouts you're joining from in the world. But I will jump straight into the first question that's come through from Jamie. And Jamie asks, what, if any, resistance did you have from colleagues in trying to connect with one another virtually? And then secondly, how do you overcome the difficulties in keeping teams engaged and connected when working remotely?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. And it's a really good question. I think in terms of the challenges of connecting virtually, initially it was around resistance to time. So if I'd scheduled a meet and greet session with any of my stakeholders or team members, there was this urgent priority that was needed from their side and they couldn't make a meeting, and so we deferred. And there were a couple of instances where we deferred a few times to the extent that, well, we weren't connecting. And so the thing that I did was to call the person up and say, hi, I'm Aneshri, I've joined as your CFO. There's a lot that we're going to do together. Let's take 15 minutes to quickly chat. Know you're busy, I'm busy. I drink coffee, do you drink coffee? And we had a virtual coffee chat. So finding that common ground around what works for your stakeholder and what works for you, but noting that not connecting is not an option. So that persistence in making sure that that initial meet and greet happened was important to me, and I kept at it. The second aspect around my team was I did find my team to be very quiet initially, and I think it's as a function of sitting behind a screen with a photo on and not necessarily, showing your face or having the opportunity to see facial emotions or even hear someone's voice. And so there was a lot of one-sided talking. And what I did thereafter was to be very deliberate, also using my heads of departments and team leaders to foster this request for feedback or request for opinion style in our conversations and team meetings. So if we started with a statement or asked a question, we wouldn't offer the next statement or a solution or a response. We would ask, so Joe Soap, what do you think about this? What's your views? Do you see any challenges? And so really bringing out my teams virtually to connect was important. And of course, I mentioned the Pecha Kucha. This Pecha Kucha was absolutely and continues to be absolutely valuable for our team. It's an opportunity where each member gets a chance to show their face on camera, of course, and talk through personal aspects of themselves. And by doing this, sharing a very deliberate initiative, we've found that as a team, we've started to connect better. We found so many similarities. I referenced that we've got a full team of musicians and bakers on board. And that has started to set the culture for this collaborative style and, I guess, contribution style in my broader team.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thanks, Jamie, for the question. Another question's come through from Chris, and Chris asks, are the challenges the same when connecting within the finance team versus connecting the finance team as a whole with the wider company? I understand the former is generally considered team building, whilst the latter is more around business partnering.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that comment and statement. I do think there's differences. I think in general, the differences are more subject matter related. Because with your finance team, you probably speak a lot more finance relevant topics, whereas in the broader team, it's at a macro level, it's at a strategic level. And so the dialogue into the rest of the stakeholder base, whether it is business unit heads or support services or enablement services, clients, it's always having a client-centric approach from a finance perspective into those forums and understanding what it is that our clients, whether they're internal or external, want to achieve from those interactions or conversations with the finance team. At the end of the day, it's coming back to service delivery, having that client-centric approach and fostering the business partnering mindset. I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. A good question has just come through from Sandeep, and Sandeep asks, what's next? Post the initial excitement, the adrenaline, how do you keep energized and how do you push the agenda further?
Thank you, Sandeep. Really good question. I would answer it from two aspects. The first is having this team first mindset, because like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot going on and there's a lot of good energy. But to maintain that means that we need to all buy into the journey forward and that we need to be excited by it. So constantly referencing each one's role to play in that journey and in realizing the bigger picture is for me important. And I personally spend a lot of time with my team doing that. I am loath to, as a CFO, doing a lot of the things, even though I will step in and get my hands dirty if I need to. But I spend a deliberate amount of time focusing my team and directing them and creating energy and motivation. So as a leader, it's important for me to continue to do that, and in so doing, create the leadership capacity that all levels throughout the finance team can do the same. It is a joint and collaborative approach. And then on a personal level, I would say, referencing my initial personal insights about myself, it's about taking time out. So It's about going, and then stopping to recognize those successes, going away for a long weekend to the ocean or to the mountains, or even just stopping at home and reading a good book, and thinking through coming up for airspace, because that allows me then to come back stronger to my team and motivate them even further. Of course, things like staying healthy, energized, finding those things that really support your mental well-being and enabling you to co-create with your team continue to be relevant, especially in these times of pandemic.
Brilliant, thank you. And then one last question we've had from Laura, who asks, how can the finance team improve on leadership and strategy and digital technology skills?
Giles, just repeat the last part, please.
Apologies. How can the finance team improve on leadership, strategy, and digital technology skills?
Thank you so much. Yeah, and this is back to my earlier point about having a learning-centered mindset. So those are very specific areas that one can learn about. And if I reference my own experience and some of my colleagues' experiences that they've cited over the years, being able to have access to leadership and technology and any other strategic imperative that you want to learn more about is important. So plugging into forums such as these to learn about what our colleagues and leaders around the world are doing and saying what's happening on the digital front. So as an example, I'm attending a CIO conference tomorrow, and while I'm not a CIO, I'm a CFO, it's important for me to understand what are the IT people saying, listen and absorb what is happening out there so that you can make sense of it and of course bring it back to your own organization and experiences. And I think just being able to ask for help, ask for mentorship, for coaching where needed, is really important. You need someone who's operating at that level or being exposed to those things to show you the way. That has personally been some of major value and experiences that I've taken away over the years. I also plan to give back, well, I am giving that back in various forums as we speak. And I think anybody in those leadership and strategic positions can do the same. And if you have an aspiration to learn more, you should absolutely reach out to those forums.